Mr. Tiffany's and bottles of bubbles. Girls with tattoos who like getting in trouble.
I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job.
Tell me why. Why can't we live together? Tell me why. Why can't we live together? Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together?
Hello, all you melanated beauties, sun-kissed by God's lips. This is Coy with your black tea sip. I'm sipping power to pour you the truth. Go grab your cup. Let's fill it up.
Hey. Welcome to the Black Tea Sip with your girl Coy on this chilly Friday. You know, everybody's talking about, ooh, it's cold. Well, the fair is in town. So just like you get an Easter snap before it gets warm, you get that first snap and then you know it's going to be cold. So, y'all go get you something hot to drink. I'm going to fill your cup up today because we got a lot to talk about. You know, we're dealing with the murder of Joshua Brown. We are dealing with the fact that the Dallas Police Department has basically told us something that many of us think is a little, well, let us just say far-fetched. That's a good word to use. And I have Dominic Alexander of Next Generation Action Network, the president of that civil rights organization, happens to be a friend of mine, a friend of the show, as well as Jane Hamilton, who is also a friend of the show and my good friend in politics and life, motherhood and such. They'll be calling in at 11:30. We are going to unpack this Joshua Brown arrest, the Joshua Brown murder, and see if there are any ties to the Amber Geiger murder trial. There have been lots of speculation out there. And we're going to also talk about the Police Review Oversight Board. Dallas City has worked to implement or revamp the what used to be the Citizens Review Board. Now it's the Police Oversight, I believe, Review Board. But we're going to talk to them because many of you were able to see my watch party, which basically showed a melee. Many people have said I've been quite critical of Chief Hall, and I don't know if that's true or not. I have been honest about Chief Hall, Chief U, Renee Hall. And with that being said, you know what, this weather didn't do my hair no justice, Angelo. And so when you're looking at yourself on these screens, you start to think about, Lord, my hair. All right, let me not be so vain. We've talked about Chief U, Renee Hall. I have said since the onset that she exercised a lot of bad judgment. I actually believe it was bad judgment from the time that Botham Jean was murdered on a Thursday and the time that she showed up at the Omega Sci-Fi picnic sipping on Omega oil. And the city was hurting and there was a lot of unrest. And she seemed to not appreciate that. And so for me personally, I thought that was an exercise of poor judgment. I've talked about other things that she's done. In fact, I didn't start on this quest to give you these eargasms until that happened. I was very disheartened about the way that the three black city councilmen agreed to give a pay raise. Not that I thought the police did not deserve a pay increase. However, I did not feel that was the time to exercise such a pay increase. And so in doing that, I started coming to you all and telling you all how I felt about it. And many of you felt the same way, that, you know, that we need to have, at the very least, a semblance of understanding for the hurting that we were all feeling. And it seemed that went unnoticed, and they seemed to continue with business as usual. Well, now, future forward, we have Amber Geiger serving a measly 10 years, eligible for parole in 5 years after the senseless slaying of Botham Jean. We have his brother, Baby Brant, the youngest of the three, who embraced her in a hug. And we have Judge Kemp, who gave her a Bible and embraced her in a hug. And what does that mean for us as a people? And I talked about it last week. And so then we go a little bit further, and now we have the one of the key witnesses, Joshua Brown, dead. Now, what they've told us has been a little bit far-fetched, and I want to talk about that in detail with you because I have been provided with the arrest record. With the arrest warrant, and what the police detail are their findings and how they're going to execute. So we're going to do some of that today. So before we get started, I feel like we need to have a word of prayer, although I'm not going to try to pray for you. Sending positive energy, good thoughts to Earl Spence Jr., world champion boxer. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, during the Grambling and Prairie View game, many of us sat out there at one of the frat houses, and they brought the big screen with the projector outside, and we ate barbecue, and, we acted like we were there at the fight. We sat outside in the cool breeze, and we watched him, DeSoto boy, bring it home, if you will, to the great state of Texas, Dallas. DeSoto, for those of you who are living and working and playing outside of the great state of Texas, outside of Dallas, DeSoto is a measly 5-minute drive, if that, from the furthest or the southernmost part of Dallas. And so now he has been involved in a terrible accident. He fortunately has no broken bones. I don't know how many of you have seen the actual wreck. They've been playing it everywhere, driving at a high speed, so they say, although they have not identified what that speed was. Show him down Riverfront, which is right offset downtown, excessive speed, and the car, he loses control of the car, hits the median, becomes airborne, hits a light pole, and then flips several times, and he had his top down on his convertible Ferrari. By the grace of what I like to call the Most High God, he is only suffering from broken teeth and not broken bones. So, that in itself is a miracle, and I think that we need to go ahead and say, hey, to Earl Spence Jr., we are so glad that he is not suffering in a way that we would all imagine, especially if you see the car. The car was so damaged that it literally looked like someone had stepped on a tin can. I mean, it's completely torn apart. It was, the technical term would be, it was smushed. It was smushed to death, and it was, it's a miracle that he is alive. He was ejected from the car, and they think that may have saved his life. He did not have his seatbelt on. I have a philosophy about seatbelts. I know many people are going to get mad at me. My cousin actually was involved in an accident when she was about 16, probably 800 years ago. She's probably going to be mad because I said that. And so she was not injured. She was thrown from the car and did not suffer any injuries, had a scratch. Fast forward several years later, her daughter has a wreck. They have their seatbelts on, and they said had they not had their seatbelts on, it would have been fatal, or certainly more tragic. So I'm kind of under the impression, even though I wear my seatbelt, that when your ticket is punched, it's punched. So those of you that are exercising this thinking that there is no one that sits up high and looks down low, I think Earl Spence Jr. would have something quite the contrary to say to that. So we are sending him good thoughts from the Black Tea Sip, positive vibes, and hoping for a speedy recovery, and praying that he will be able to get back in the ring as he will defend his IBF welterweight championship. So 2012 Olympian, won 7 title fights, and now IBF champion of the world. So we want him to be able to get back and get healthy. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with in New Orleans. You know, I tend to talk about New Orleans from time to time because New Orleans always got something going on, child. Well, quiet as it's kept, and I guess it's not that quiet because it was all over Black Twitter. There was a coach, Nathaniel Jones, head coach of St. Augustine, which is a black private Catholic high school. Well, he was talking to his um, football players. And as a coach, he was riling them up and getting them ready to play a team called Brother Martin, which is a white private high school in New Orleans. And I'm not sure if they're rivals. And, well, with that being said, used the word nigga, you know, Niggah. And the video went viral, and the school president of the opposing team, Brother Martin, Greg Rando, who graduated from Brother Martin in 1977, when I'm sure the population was much different than it is now. Now is believed to be approximately 60% white, 40% black. Well, he was embarrassed and offended by the use of the word nigga. Well, this one I don't understand, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Why do white people get an opportunity to be offended by the word they invented? I don't know. God bless me. I know y'all gonna say it for me. You know, the thing is, I think it's very odd that they tend to want to become offended when I have to laugh. They become offended in our use of the word. Well, now maybe Mr. Rando of 1977 graduating class of Brother Martin has never used the word. Maybe he's never used that word ever. Perhaps it's possible. It's not probable, but it is possible. And so Brother Rando, Brother Martin, was shocked and embarrassed. And so he reported head coach Nathaniel Jones' actions and, I guess, ensured that this video was seen by the leadership at St. Augustine, and Nathaniel Jones and 2 assistant coaches were terminated because of his use in firing up his players of the word nigga. Niggah. Put an H on so we can say nigga. So then it's so far off from their use of the word. And so, you know, I just want to pose this question to you all as to why is it all right for us not to use a word that clearly they invented to identify us. Do we not have the ability and the opportunity, the right and the privilege to identify ourselves as we see fit, regardless of what someone else thinks about it? Are we not fortunate enough to define our own identities? Are we subjected to what someone else thinks of us? And we have to live according to that? Well, by virtue of that precedent, isn't that the very essence of slavery? The mentality and the sentimentality therein? I would propose to Greg Rando that he overstepped. And what he could have and should have done was simply, go to head coach Nathaniel Jones and have a conversation. But I propose that that's not at all what that was about. I propose that perhaps they had an excellent football team at St. Augustine under head coach Jones. And just perhaps, you know how my mind works, the little wheels start to turn, and perhaps we're going to maybe size. Just maybe, perhaps, that it was good to get rid of Coach Jones and the 2 assistant principals to rattle the cages of the kids, to put them in a precarious situation in the middle of the season, and to create a situation where they would not be as successful. Golly gee, could that possibly be it? Because surely Greg Rando was not that offended by the use of the word that does not identify him or a class of people that he identifies with, nor a group that he is directly connected to. I guess in his thinking, he was doing that for all the little colored kids that go to the Brother Martin School. Surely you just. Perhaps he was doing that because he wanted to show New Orleans and the world that through social media and reporting that he was a good white man. Perhaps it's none of those things. Perhaps he just didn't like the fact that the word was used as his school. And he wanted to demonstrate that that would not be tolerated. Maybe that's it. This is what I do know. We can stop the maybe-sizing right there. What I do know is that this man and two others have lost their jobs because a white man thought that that was the most appropriate action to take. But bumped. That's the beginning and the end of that right there. We are still being identified by what someone thinks the image of us, not only in our interaction with one another, not only in our dedication to our career choices, but moreover, how we choose to connect with one another. That is too under the scrutiny of white people. This is when I say white people are just white peopling, because that's exactly what he was doing. He was white peopling. And I'm not spelling that like W-H-I-T-E. I'm literally spelling that like W-Y-P-I-P-O, white people. And they were white people in. Because this had nothing to do with him. And if he was that offended, he could have pulled the couch to the side. But because of this action, the president of, or the leadership of the black school had to demonstrate that they are, and get this, more in tune with the white thinking of the use of the word than in tune with the black man that actually used the word, that is more like the person who ultimately made the decision for them to be terminated. Now, ain't that something, boys and girls? When will we stop doing that? You know, I had a very interesting conversation with a girl named Kenya, who is one of my chapter sorors. And I posted in one of the groups, Divine Nine Online, and it's all of the black Greek organizations together in this group. And I posted, do they ever get tired of the fact that I don't see us doing as much as I think black Greek organizations should or could? And she went on to tell me about people getting shot and losing their jobs, and someone else talked about tax exemptions for the organizations, and they disagreed with taking a political stance. It is that kind of thinking that caused black leadership to fire the head coach of the black school, who was talking to all black kids who were completely riled and fired up by what they were hearing, ready to go and kick some white booty on the 50-yard line. It's that kind of thinking that says, I'm not willing to sacrifice my man. I have Dominique Alexander calling today, and I told you all that this young man puts his life on the line every day that he wakes up and puts on his pants. At 30 years old, he does not know if he's going to go back home to his own children. Yet, he is dedicated to the work, to the commitment, because he has chosen not to fall in line with assimilated thinking. And he is willing to put his life on the line for her children and her man. But she would say she is not willing to reciprocate. Isn't that the problem with black people? When black folks get to black people in, we start to drawing lines in the sand about what we would not do when we see there are others that can. I don't have a problem with someone sharing their sentiments about how they're not involved. That's not your ministry. I respect it. What I do have a problem with is people that find fault with people who are actually out here, pumps on the pavement, boots on the ground, in the trenches, doing the good work. I think we have too much of that. Far too much of that. That's what caused this thing we're going to talk about at the Police Review Board. Caused almost a melee. It is that line of thinking. It is that line of thinking that would have us believe that Joshua Brown is a drug dealer and was shot and killed in a drug deal gone bad. It's that kind of thinking. It's that kind of thinking that allows us to believe that we should not defend one another, support one another, be in tune with one another. It's that kind of thinking. You know, I don't really know what it is we're supposed to think or believe in. Certainly not collectively. I would never suggest that all black people are supposed to think the same thing at the same time all the time. No, boys and girls. Never, never, never. Would I say that? What I will say is, for those of you that are not committed to the work, shut up and move to the side. Get on the sideline. You know, the very least you could do is give us some water while we're running this race. I would suggest that perhaps maybe we should start calling Brother Martin and ask for Greg Rando, who graduated from the school in 1977 when the demographics were much different. And just ask him, who does he think he is to express that he was shocked and embarrassed about a word that does not define him? I would suggest that perhaps maybe we just need to do a little more and reach out to St. Augustine and tell him that we are shocked and appalled at the fact that they fired this man for using a word that because another man said that he was offended when his people created the word. We're simply using it. I mean, isn't that where real power comes from? When you can take your lemon and make lemonade? Well, isn't that what, I mean, for those people who say, I don't like the word because it defines people to be ignorant, okay. But I think that is the word nigger, and it ends in ER, because they were stealing them from Niger and Nigeria. And so, you know, when we start talking about Nigeria and people start talking about the African-American experience, I think it's Nigeria where they were not affected. So let me backtrack that. But there are certain places. Negest is Ethiopian word for royalty. So were they poking fun when they came up with nigger? I do not know. I just know it wasn't our word. But for those people who choose to use it, they take the power away from the person that created it and they use it for their own benefit. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I will not speak on that. But what I will tell you is Greg Rando doesn't have the right to make a decision. That's beyond the brevity and scope of his white privilege. So, I think we ought to start calling these schools St. Augustine in New Orleans and and Brother Martin in Brother Martin. What kind of school is that? Brother Martin. What kind of name is that for a school? Brother Martin, and ask for Greg Rando, class of 1977, and just ask, why does he think it's appropriate to tell us that he was shocked and embarrassed by a word that does not affect him? I'd like to know what he has to say. Well, I would venture a guess that what he is going to say is not going to satisfy you nor me. But that is the world we live in. We live in a world where people get to tell us how we should use the vernacular that we have decided to take control of. Now, ain't that something? Well, with that being said, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to come right back. And then Dominic Alexander and Jane Hamilton are going to talk to us. We're going to hear a little clip, and they're going to talk to us about this Citizens Police Review Board, what that means. Chief Hall actually took over, and it's a review board to review the police. So I'm actually very interested to find out why she thought it was appropriate for her to conduct a meeting that is supposed to review the police. And the people were there because they are upset about the very corrupt case that was led at the hands of Mike Mata in particular, and the Dallas Police Department and the Dallas Police Association into the Botham Jean murder trial. That was why the people were there. She attempted to shut it down and took over the meeting when she is not a part of the board. Isn't that interesting? Remember when I said bad judgment? Okay, all right. Renee. All right, we're going to take a quick little break, and I'll be right back.
1990, Chubb Rock jumps upon the scene with the lean and a pocket full of green. The green doesn't symbolize I made it on the top, but RoboCop last year was a shock. The tone of the Popeye cut shook your
Jane, are you there?
This is
Hello?
Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is this
Okay.
Coy?
Yes, I'm gonna bring you on after the break. Somebody just sent me a clamp of Judge Kemp saying that the bailiff was not stroking her hair, but was searching for contraband. It's just too much. Um, Send a text to um Dominique and have him call you, and then you can just merge him in. Can you hear me? Let me see if I can get him
Are
on.
you talking to me?
Is this Jane?
This is Kelly.
Okay. What comes after that? Just like a second after that. Mm-hmm. If I have more than one caller, can you add them here?
Yeah, yeah. So go ahead, click add,
Okay.
and then dial pad.
Well, I don't know. They're going to have to call me
Why?
because,
That's the only way you can have more people is if you call them.
okay, Kelly, you're going to have to call Jane because I wasn't expecting nobody but him, Jane, and Dominique. All right, and we're back. So now, when I ended, I was telling you all about how we have to fit into some mold for, you know, for us to be accepted, right? Well, let me tell you what I found to be very interesting. What I find to be most interesting is the fact that as we're trying to fit into these molds, we also have those of us who will defend the police department and will defend the fact that whatever they tell us, right? So a lot has happened for a lot has happened in the in our unpacking this Joshua Brown murder. And Joshua Brown was the key witness, one of the key witnesses, excuse me, in the Amber Geiger trial. And the reason that the black community has risen up and asked so many questions is because uh, it seems a little bit odd that he would testify amongst all of these other things that they say were going on in his life. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what my assessment was of that and how I told I told Tanya Eisner that her coverage of the Amber Geiger case was very one-sided. And so when we're talking about Joshua Brown and the murder and what the information they have given us, one of the things that people have said is that they wanted the police department to be held accountable for the corruption that went on and her not being arrested, treated as a officer involved shooting, which meant she was on duty when the shooting took place and it was in the course of her job. None of that was true. And so there have been people, Dominique Alexander has been one of them, have worked very diligently to, and it was a coalition of people, not just him, that to revamp the police review board to give it a little bit more teeth and to ensure that there were mechanisms in place for accountability. So I have Jane Hamilton on the phone, my friend, a friend of the show, who was the chief of staff for U.S. Congressman Mark Veazey. She's been involved in Dallas politics as well as other places. We are friends in politics, friends in motherhood. She just recently had a little boy, so now she has joined the sorority of black moms with black boys. And she's also my sorority sister, but she is a very accomplished and very wise person that I think has a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight as to not only what went wrong, but, you know, we've also talked about corrective action. Jane, welcome. I'm so glad to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Coy. I appreciate it.
So I know that Dominique's going to call in just a little while, but I have a little bit of the clip, and I want to just play the first one. A little bit of this of the clip when they were at the police. And what is the exact title now? Because it has changed. Of the board. Can you hear me? Can she hear me? Jane, can you hear me? Did we lose her? Uh-oh. I think we might have lost our, we might have lost. Uh-oh. Well, the police.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. The organization is the Dallas Community Police Oversight Coalition.
And it used to be called what? The Citizens Review Board? Police Review Board?
The Citizens Review Board, right.
Okay. So now I know that Dominique and Chunga and others worked directly with Chief Hall, Chief, you know, I like to say Chief Renee Hall, and Dallas City Council, Dallas City leadership, to revamp this board to give it some more teeth. But there have been persons placed on the board that would not necessarily, for lack of a better way of stating, be able to assist us in dealing with the issues like the Mike Mata's handling of the Amber Geiger murder case. So can you speak a little bit about the makeup of the board?
Yeah, so I would like to first clarify, because I realize I may have misunderstood your question. The Dallas Community Police Oversight Coalition is what Changa and Dominique both manage. That coalition consists of obviously residents here who care about this issue, as well as around 30 organizations that are local. One being TOP and some other organizations that have come on board. They worked together to then create the Community Police Oversight Board, which essentially took over the roles and responsibilities, as well as I would say, you know, they have a different sort of focus than what the Citizens Oversight Board had. So I think it's very important for everyone to understand that the Community Police Oversight Board was founded, and created from the work of the Dallas Community Police Oversight Coalition, meaning that this board is not a board that sort of interacts with the public in the way a lot of the committees do for Dallas. This is different. The rules are different. The way it was established is completely different. And it is, in fact, for the community. It is a board created by the community and a board for the community. So you can imagine how those who spend a lot of time, years working on this, must have felt when they showed up to the first meeting, to their meeting for a committee that they created, and were almost shut down and not allowed to speak.
Well, and let me stop you right there. So I think it's extremely important. I'm so glad to have you on, that people understand that in order to deal with many of the issues that were plaguing the community and the police department, these coalitions of organizations came together so that they could say the community needs a voice, and in order to try to alleviate the distrust that the community has for the police department, this is a way that we believe will work best. So the first meeting, I'm going to play just a little bit of this clip, Jane, so that people have an idea, just a smidget of it, just for the first meeting, to give people an idea of what actually took place.
First, I would like to acknowledge Joshua's family. We in the Dallas Police Department.
The live. I'm sorry. Here we go.
Hold on a second, Tom. There's a way to do everything.
This the way.
So
When we get to speak.
Can you give us a second and let us give you an answer? It is not necessary to just.
They were about to close the meeting.
So, okay, and can you give us an opportunity as a board? I don't know if they were prepared.
No, they said.
So let us, Mr. Chairman.
No disrespect to you. Shut up, you ignoramus.
All right, so that was Chief U. Renee Hall speaking to the persons that were in attendance for the meeting. I think one of the concerns that I had, and many people have expressed, Jane, is that Chief Hall kept using the pronoun we. It was my understanding that the police department was not a part of this board. It was to operate independently of the police department. Can you speak to that?
That is correct. You're absolutely correct. The city council members have an opportunity to appoint to the board, but the Dallas Police Department, essentially, basically, to put it plainly, is an invited guest, obviously, right? Because once again, the point of the board is for the community to work with the city council so that they may appoint board members. But this is community first. And I do think that this is culturally different, right, for Dallas. And so I think leaders in Dallas, as well as the leadership in DPD, they first have to understand that they need a cultural shift, right? Because in their mind, they're running this. This is not a board for them to run. This is a board for the community to exercise their will, to have a way to express themselves, right? You can't say, oh, we have all these protests and it's a shame and, so on and so forth. And then you don't even want to give the public a forum.
Well, and I think that is, and I just wanted to play a little bit of the clip because I was tagged into this and it was about 7 minutes long, and so I certainly don't want to spend 7 minutes. But I also think it's important for people to understand that it was extremely odd for Chief Hall to be on the mic and to be speaking, and I think that that's extremely important to demonstrate how people within who have worked on this coalition have brought this board to fruition, and then to have her, for lack of a better term, emceeing it was very off-putting. And I've heard people say all kinds of things about why they thought that she should or should not be there. But I think a young woman who was talking to her, it erupted, as you and I have both seen. It turned into a bit of a melee. And you had one gentleman who was literally had to get out of his clothes to get away from the police. But I think what is not being said, and I've been very critical of Chief Hall in her judgment. And I think what's extremely important is that Dominique Alexander has been a huge proponent for her, a champion of her cause, to try to make sure that she got not only the opportunity to be in the position. I think that he lobbied for her in that regard, but to also ask us to give her a chance and to be supportive of her while they're throwing grenades under her seat. But what I see with Chief Hall is the fact that she always seems to turn on us a little bit, and she then said she was going to have the extraction team remove the people. Now, in the beginning, we heard someone say they had closed the meeting. I'm assuming they, because I don't have the entire clip, I only got sent that portion when it erupted. They, being the board, tried to end the meeting. She then decides she's going to take over, and then she sends an extraction team. I'd like to talk about a little bit about your idea of what that sends the message to Black America, and that are onlookers, because this is very high profile, as well as white America, when you see a Black police chief woman tell police officers to physically extract people from the room.
Okay, I'd first like to address the agenda really quickly, and then we can move on to that. Number one, I want to commend this group, this coalition that was there. When they got the agenda, there was nothing on the agenda that even showed that they were going to be allowed to speak.
Wait a minute, hold on, Jane. Hold on, Jane. Dominique is, I believe, on the call now. I just wanted to make sure that that I let you know that Dominique is now in the call, and we are talking about the agenda of what took place at the board meeting. So continue, Jane.
Yes, and so when they got there, they weren't on the agenda to speak. So you have to, let's just go from there. You have a meeting, you have a committee that, this coalition has established. And let's just be clear. This committee is established because of the work of this coalition. So it would not have happened if it weren't for them. They get there. There is nowhere on the agenda for them to speak. That is problematic. So I want to commend them for being patient and waiting to the end, all the way through everything that had to happen for them to speak. When they got to the end, yes, it is true that the chair, following the agenda, the next thing was to close the meeting. That is when the chief began to speak. And Dominique, I'll let you take it from there.
Welcome,
awesome.
Dominique.
How y'all doing today?
We're doing all right. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. I think Jane said it very good. Is that it was very hard to sit through the meeting and see all of the stuff, because it was very hard for us to do it, because we were seeing the Dallas Police Department briefing the Oversight Committee on their do's and their don'ts. Right.
Okay, wait a minute.
Let's
pause right there. Let's pause right there. So now we have to give credence to the fact that this board is supposedly operating independently, separate and apart of the Dallas Police Department. Now you're saying that the
Correct.
Dallas Police Department is actually giving the board their instructions.
Correct. Basically gave it the whole agenda. Now, remember, when we was organizing this structure, we wanted this office to be literally away from the assistant city manager, John Fortune, which is public safety, which is Chief Renee Hall's boss or whatever. But basically on the agenda, they brought in the internal affairs, some lieutenant guy, I'm not sure, and Chief Renee Hall to go down the slides and tell them their marching order. Mind you, that some of those slides that they presented to this board were slides that the coalition created. You know what I'm saying? And I want people to understand that this coalition has been on every side of the creation of this, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, how do they know all that? How do they do that? Well, we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with an organization based out of D.C., which is named the Leadership Conference. This organization is comprised of, as the president and CEO, the young lady was named Vanita Gupta. She was in Barack Obama's administration, DOJ Civil Rights Division. She actually became very popular once it was, because she was the one that actually did the whole thing with the travel ban stuff. So, and also Linda Garcia, which was the lady that went around. She was a part of the DOJ during the Obama administration. She was the one that was on ground doing the dissent decree against Ferguson. She made national headliners. So we had that type of collaboration in this coalition to be able to get to this point. So I say it was very hard for us to see that, right? But we were communicating with each other and saying, look, I know if we shut this thing down right here in the middle of this and before this right here, they're going to be like, oh, we were going to get there and all that type of stuff. So we deliberately sat and waited until they ended the meeting, right? Now, at the same time, we're sitting there going to Assistant City Manager John Fortune and other city officials and saying, even council member Tanel Atkins was there. We're saying, hey, you know this stuff is illegal to remove this from the agenda, right? You know this what's got. So we're doing that, and we wait until the chair basically said, well, we're going to adjourn to November, when he said November, I think that's when the words started coming out of Brother Chugga Higgins' mouth.
Okay, so Dominique, how long was the meeting before they moved to adjourn? How long did you sit?
According to the online thing, it was probably like 45 minutes.
So what was your understanding of what was going to take place going into the meeting?
This was the first board meeting. This was going to be a time where the board comes together, understand exactly the nuances of it. It's going to be on the agenda. They're going to vote for the times of the meeting, which they did, 5:30, right? They're going to get kind of familiar. They're going to set stuff on schedule and different things of that nature, right?
Right.
But
that, you know.
What did you say, Jane?
No. So the actual council, the mayor has to appoint the chair, and remind you that the chair was appointed the day, like he was told that he was chairing this meeting. So he was told that he was chairing this committee, like literally, probably like 2 hours before the meeting.
So
Mind you, the coalition asked him. Yeah, he was told that he was chairing this meeting like 2 hours. Mind you, the chair and all of these people in the coalition told John Fortune to postpone this meeting because all of the council people had not actually officially voted on it. The chair was actually officially voted by the city council the day after the meeting. So it was really ill prepared for them to do that, but some kind of way they was trying to rush it. And Chief Renee Hall said something that I later on, clapped back on or whatever it was, is that the board is a liaison between the community and the police department. And I said, no. The board is an oversight committee. Oversight, that's not. There's no term of liaison in there,
It seemed to make
but
you
at the
laugh.
end of the day, it was.
That seemed to make you laugh, Dominique.
Oh yeah, it made me laugh because that's what happens, Corey, is that we'll work on this stuff as community organizers and coalition members and stuff like that or whatever, and then they'll sit here and tell me, oh, Dominique, can we work together, right? And we'll work together all the way into these meetings, right? And about 48 hours or 72 hours before, they changed the whole script. And mind you, we had meetings for weeks with John Fortune, right? Never did he say that public comments is going to be off the agenda. And I told him, I said, let me say this real quick. This Dallas Police Oversight Committee is going to be a baby for organizers, right? It's going to be the baby just like the Botanical Garden is in the Arts and Cultural Board, right? It's going to be a baby just like the Friends of Library do to the Parks and Recreation Department. We're going to be there every step, every month. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that all of these unsung names and individuals who have lost their lives due to police corruption in the city of Dallas has a voice.
So with her understanding that was the role of this board, I think in the very essence of the name, and Jane did an excellent job of breaking that down, community means that it is for the community. My confusion, and I know that you and I and Jane, we've had several conversations about Chief Hall and how we feel about her collectively and independently. However, it's these kind of things. I want to play just one more clip for the people who have not had an opportunity, just to talk about the feelings when you go into these meetings and you think you have an understanding because of the relationship. Go ahead and play the clip, Angelo.
What is, first of all, if you calm down, the reason I'm not going to let us in this room act like animals. I'm not.
But you're violating our rights. You are violating the rights of the people.
So now, my understanding is that you worked diligently for several months to bring this to fruition. This is the first board meeting. They have you all sitting quietly. No, there is absolutely no comments going to be heard from the community. There is a motion to adjourn the meeting and close it out without letting you speak. The chief, Renee Hall, top law enforcement in the city of Dallas, takes the microphone and decides that they're going to usher people out, because I didn't play the part where she starts talking about the extraction team. After you are able to get command of the community, because the persons in the room, they are part of the community. So they're not audience members. They are community members. After you're able to get them to calm down, because we talked about it earlier, it erupts. It's almost a complete melee. Police officers start grabbing on people. We've seen on the news a white woman that was there is being pushed by the police officers. And this is at Chief Renee Hall's behest. She actually tells them, the extraction team, to remove the people. You calm the people down, and she uses the word animals to refer to the people's reaction to her releasing the extraction team on them while they were seated. No one, I didn't see, or I was not told, nor did I see anyone that was jumping up and down. People were still seated, but they were yelling out because they wanted to be heard. When you hear the word, people, you and others, being called acting like animals, what is the feeling in the room as to what you believe the board is going to be able to do future forward?
Well, one of the things to go back, because that really, that when she used that term, really bothered me. It really upsetted me, right?
I'm
sure. But at the end of the day, what you see is two individuals, assistant city manager and the police department, being involved in something that the ordinance does not even have their involvement in regards to the structure in the day-to-day things that's going on, right? It's very problematic. And at the end of the day, these are the words that she used after we try to calm them down, and then she calls us animals. That is literally a slave mentality term that has always been used since Jim Crow all the way into now to refer to African Americans, and to see her stand up and say that on a mic, right, leads to the fact of why she knew she needed to apologize before that night got over.
Well, now,
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I need to interject here if y'all don't mind. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. James.
Thank you. This, there was a lot wrong with the meeting, okay? But if you're going to stand at a podium and project yourself as a leader, and if you're going to take on a leadership leadership role, you must have some kind of sensitivity training. Obviously, she has not had it. And listen, as Blacks in the city, Chief, we're on your side. We've been on your side from day one.
Day one.
But when you go into using language that has been used to dehumanize us, as in dehumanizing people of color, they talked about us as monkeys and chimpanzees and all kind of things. And you as an African-American woman have the audacity to use that word. Now, if you were white, it's fair to say it had been a protest maybe at the steps of DPD.
Correct.
You get a pass. You have been given a pass, but you can't abuse it, sister. So if you need sensitivity training, if you need communications 101, We have a lot of talented people in Dallas, and they can sit you down and they can talk about breathing, thinking before you speak, how to avoid inciting a crowd. Because I'm sorry, even though she tried to project a very calm manner, the words that she chose to use, calling in a distraction team, using the word animal, was the opposite of how you calm a crowd. And so what I am seeing is a leader who needs a team to get around her, or either needs to bring in someone else to help her. Maybe she does not have the right tools and resources, but that is what I want to see her improve. It has to happen, because you are dealing in Dallas with a city that has been put on notice by its residents, okay?
Yes,
and
yes.
what we are saying loud and clear, today is a new day. We are not going to continue to accept this, and we're definitely not going to accept it from an African-American police chief. I want to see her be successful, okay? Our new mayor, he deserves to have a fighting chance. But if things like this continue to happen, it's not going to work.
No, it's not.
I am begging and pleading for someone to put her in a class, give her some online training, whatever it is that she needs to understand that the words that she decides to use are important. And she's got to own every single word that she uses. Well, every word that she decides to utter, she has to own it.
Well, and I think
we don't want to hear sorry after the fact.
Well, that was going to be my next statement. I think, for one, people really need to understand how Dominique has championed for her even before she got in the role. I think there is a bit of a misnomer that he is supportive of her because she got the job, when in truth, she has the job because he was supportive of her. And I just wanted to make sure that we talk about that. I know, Dominic, you've got to go. Jane, can you stay on for a little while longer?
Hey, I'm going to come back on, y'all. But I'm going to come back on.
Okay, Chonga's going to come on at 12:10. So, Jane, can you stay on just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Dominique. I think you and I are completely aligned in our thinking about what our expectations are. And I think that we tend to be very tolerable of misdeeds. I don't think that saying I'm sorry after the fact heals the hearts and minds of the people that are in the room that have diligently worked to bring this board to fruition, only to find out that the police chief has a stronghold on the board, because the thinking would be that the community is not a part of this board as it was purposed, but that the police department is running the show based on how we understand it took place. I think to say that she needs training is a little bit comical, but the truth is it's true that we have a police chief. I got started, and which brought me to Fishbowl Radio Network, because I started talking about her Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days after the Botham Jean murder. I started talking about how she exercised poor judgment. And even though I agree that she does need someone to pull her coattail, I'm not sure about training, Jane, because this seemingly continues to happen with her. She uses the worst words and exercises very poor judgment. I can remember the beating that the young woman took on Elm Street that has been since termed the Nightmare on Elm Street, when the white man beat that woman unconscious. And Chief Hall's statement to WFAA's reporter was, I haven't seen the tape. I know there's a tape out there, but I hadn't seen it. It was like a week later. I'm not sure if training is what will improve. I just think there is, this case has been very high profile. She's new to the job, and I'm not sure if she's really up for the challenge to move us forward, because as you know, we have a lot of challenges dealing with the way the case was handled. And I am of the understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, that the community, this board, was the initial meeting should have brought in some of the factors that would help define how they would look at not just the Amber Geiger case, but Kate's future forward. Is that not part of this board's responsibility?
I mean, listen, the board is, yes, that is a part of it, right? But the board is all encompassing, right? So it's not just about this case. It is about a lot of things. It is about DPD and how they relate, right, to people of color in this city. It is about their practices. It is all encompassing of a variety of issues, right? It just so happens to be that at this time, while this board is newly established, that we have all of these things going on in our city that just happen to underscore the need for this board. Okay,
Yes.
So that's an aside, but I do want to say this with regard to training. Listen, I am happy to give the chief the benefit of the doubt and to say when you know better, you do better. I do believe that she is well intended. I also have to say that if she would have thought about the word animal, she would not have used it. I know she wouldn't have used it. And you know how I know she wouldn't have used it, Coy? Because there are people in that very department that may have, at some point in their lives, referred to her as such.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that they have. I'm just
Absolutely.
saying that is a word that as African Americans, we know about. And so I just think maybe she got caught up in the moment, and that is how she responded. And that happens, and it does happen to leaders. The most important thing, though, for a community to see after you apologize is action. What is your actionable item that you are doing now? Are you getting any kind of training? If you have, let us know. If you have, you need more, because we want to see you be successful. Because I will give the chief this one very important thing. She is accessible.
Okay.
And in many
Well, that's
cases,
important.
leaders will lock down their accessibility and they can't get in and no one can talk to that person. So I'm going to give her that. I will give her that. I'm happy to. And I think many of us are. And we're not against her, but we do expect more of her. She should have a sensitivity because she's African American.
Well, I agree. And what's so concerning to me is that there seems to be a misstep at every single juncture of her tenure here. I'm using tenure lightly. When it comes to issues of race relations. I was very surprised that we didn't hear directly from her. We heard from one of her assistant police chiefs, Avery Morgan, I believe is his name, when they said they had caught the the Joshua Brown murderers. I was surprised that we did not see her. My concern is that we don't get the messaging that we should get from her from time to time. And I feel, and you know, and I said that kind of jokingly about her training, but I am concerned, and I've been critical, but I've also, like you just said, those things that I think she got right, I've also talked about those things. I mean, let's be clear, and I've said this before, the Prairie View and Grambling game where they tailgate. So, you know, the entire block is tailgating. Not one person there is harassed or bothered. And it's us out there, and people are drinking and barbecuing, and they stay as long as they want. And so even before she got here, that is what we did. But when you go to new leadership, you never know what you're going to get. So I don't want to suggest that every time there seems to be something that's black and going on, we can't count on her, because it would have been very easy for her to withdraw herself and not make sure that one event that is a staple in black life in Dallas does not continue to go on without a hitch. And that's maybe something very nominal, but it's very important to the people who attend that and especially went to those schools, because it has become a staple in the city. The things that she's done well, I would have liked to have seen her during the Amber Geiger I'm going to call it a fiasco, leading up to her firing, I would have liked to have heard her say, you know what, there were some things that we just didn't get right. But future forward, we're going to do A, B, and C, and kind of lay those things out. We continue to hear her talk about transparency. However, the messaging seems to fly directly in the face of that. We don't necessarily get the messaging that goes with the other part of the messaging, for lack of a better term.
Well, this is the thing, right? Dallas doesn't do transparency well.
They don't
right?
do it at all.
That's not a high point for this city, and we all know that, right? But with that being said, we do know that she has a communications team. We know some people on her communications team,
yes, we do.
And they are capable. All I am saying is that you have to first say there's a problem.
I
And
agree.
you have to admit to yourself that there is a problem before you are open and willing to bring in the resources and use the resources that people have offered to you, okay? Because I'm aware of some.
I am as well.
You have to decide that is important, that messaging and the words that you decide to use are important enough to seek assistance. And I'm not sure yet that the chief has made that decision. And if she has made that decision, then I am here to say, along with a whole bunch of other people, we need to still work on it. And all she needs to say is, hey, listen, there does need to be work there, and I'm working on it. But right now, we just don't feel that, we don't see that, and we don't hear that. And so it's catch up, because this time in Dallas is too sensitive, and people are on edge. It's very tense, and she is our leader, and we need her to be on point with the words that she's deciding to use, the actions that she is deciding to take, and I believe that is where she wants to be. But hey, you need more help, sister. You need a team. You need some additional resources, or maybe you're not listening. Because a lot of times people are in leadership roles and they do have a team around them and they are not listening. I don't know what's going on. But all I'm saying is right now in this city, we need her leadership, we need her words, and we need her on point. And so we just need to see improvement there.
Well, we do need to see improvement, and we need to have the full faith and confidence that she is not going to overshadow this board. And I don't know that we're going to be successful. I'm going to see if we can get Chunga on. I know he's part of the coalition, and just get his last and final thoughts about future forward and moving forward. Chunga, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Welcome.
Chunga Rod.
Welcome to the Black Tea Sip, brother. We were just talking about the community police oversight board. Jane is on. Dominique had to jump off. But I know that you have done a lot of work, a lot of boots on the ground and been in the trenches to bring this to fruition. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about how you felt that in that meeting and now what the plan is moving future forward.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. So, like I've been telling everybody, what you saw play out in that meeting Tuesday night was everything that's wrong with policing, and the city of Dallas city management office and the city council's mindset about the board, right? And it's time for it to shift, their mindset to shift, because that board is very different than the old review board.
We'll talk about the differences between them, Chunga, so that the people understand the difference.
Yeah, and so the way they tried to run it last night is like out of the same mindset that it's been in. So, but now that board is different because that board is independent. It does not answer to the city manager. It doesn't answer to, it's not a liaison board to DPD. It is its own independent, autonomous board that has an investigatory arm as well. So, the problem with the meeting on Tuesday was that the city manager set the agenda for it. And when he set that agenda, he didn't put room for public comment in there. Now, if the chair, the chair was newly appointed, so that day, so I can understand why it hadn't changed, but it should have been that chair's call to say, okay, we're gonna have public comment, you know?
Right.
But that agenda was already set for the chair.
Well, I think it's
And so
important. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I also think it's important for people to understand that not just because this show actually is around the world. I think people need to understand that the city manager is T.C. Broadnax. However, the assistant city manager that set the T.C. Broadnax is a black man city manager here.
Yes,
and his assistant was the
city
one
manager, John Fortune.
who is not of African American descent.
No, he's from McKinney. He came, I believe, from McKinney or somewhere in North Texas. Okay. And let me just say, we have been working in partnership with him, and this is not saying that we still aren't going to work in partnership with him to finish off the final parts of reviewing the oversight board's procedures and protocols and stuff like that, right? But I got to say, the way that meeting was ran and the way that agenda was put together was wrong. And I mean, so you saw the protesters and organizers and activists who expected to be able to speak at that meeting. You know, it was the first meeting of this historic 40-year fight board that we finally got, and it should have had public comments. It was just fundamentally wrong for them not to have public comment.
And so the expectation was that you would be able to speak. And so give me 3 things that you thought were most important to say in that meeting and to be heard, should it have allowed for public comment?
Yeah, so the public comment part of it caused the blow up when the situation was escalated when Chief Hall decided to get the extraction team to move us out. But the real thing that we were there to talk about were the board appointments, some of the board appointments on the board. And so
some of them are problematic for the intended purpose of the board. So talk a little bit about what's wrong with some of the appointments or the board members that are currently sitting as far as for the intended purpose of the community review board. I mean, oversight.
Yeah, so the board has about 10 holdover positions, and there are people in that holdover, in some of those holdover positions, and have just been appointed that are really problematic. And so Paula Blackman, District 9 City Councilwoman, appointed Tammy Brown Rodriguez to the board, which Tammy Brown Rodriguez ran against her in the last election and threw her support behind her, Councilwoman Blackman. So we don't know if this was a political appointment or what, but it's just the wrong fit for the board, because if anybody goes back and checks out Tammy Brown Rodriguez's campaign, it was like a mini Trump campaign. You know, it was she supported the ban on sanctuary city. She didn't want to. She was against taking down the Confederate monuments in Dallas, in that whole fight. And she actually filled out a questionnaire.
I'm well aware, Chong, I sat on that task force, and I sit on the work group now for the city of Dallas to recontextualize some of the messaging, and I'm well aware of her position. Let's use that word.
Yes, exactly. And also, she campaigned saying that she didn't feel like the review board needed to exist, and that it didn't need additional funding to become an oversight board. I know. So we fundamentally feel like she kind of expressed that she doesn't need to be on this board. Like, why would you want to serve on a board that you don't even think a few months ago when you were campaigning to the citizens of Dallas that you don't even think it should exist? And her comments during the town hall meetings, her and her husband's comments were very divisive and volatile comments, anti-immigrant comments. Her husband stood up and said, Trump is right. I feel like we need to build that wall, making statements like that. And so people remember her. that attended those meetings.
Now, was her
And
husband the one that called people ignoramus? Was that her husband?
No.
Oh.
I'll get to that, But so that is the husband of board member Janice Coffey, who was appointed by Chad West. That's the second person that we find very problematic too on the board, because the coalition has met with her several times to try to understand her concerns with the board. She was a former review board member, and when we approached the board in 2018 to support the oversight reform changes, she was the only board member that didn't vote for it. So we had a series of meetings with her to talk to her about the oversight changes and understand why she was in opposition. We couldn't really get a clear understanding of why she was in opposition, but she just said she was. So we feel like if you're in opposition of the changes, why should you serve on the board?
I agree.
And then her husband, Tuesday night, was the one who hollered out, "You ignoramus," and incited the crowd a little bit more than it had to be in that meeting. So, we feel like these people are very divisive and they need to go. There's one other board member named Jim Birdsong. He's a holdover as well. And he openly said that he didn't agree with the oversight changes and that he didn't feel like the board needed to be reformed to an oversight board in the public safety meeting in 2018. So, earlier this year. So we just feel like, this board, because of the nature of what it is, you just can't put anybody on this board, because it's about building public trust with Black and brown communities and these communities who bore the brunt of bad policing in Dallas. You just can't put your political appointees on this board. You have to put people on this board that either have the expertise or bring some special skills to this board, or are really passionate about the work of police oversight and don't have other agendas.
Well, and I think it's also important to say that the people that are appointed don't have to necessarily be aligned with what you are currently doing, but they do need to have an understanding of why this is needed, and not just it doesn't need to be the fluff that we've had before. I haven't taken any breaks. I haven't paid homage to any sponsors because this conversation was so good. I'm going to have to do that, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to have any final thoughts, Chunga or Jane. Don't everybody talk at once.
Well, I just want to thank Changa and Dominique and the coalition for their work around this. You all are really are representing us. You're representing residents in Dallas, and this is hard work, and it takes courage to do the work that you're doing. And a lot of people don't know the things that you all go through to be able to do this. And I just want to tell you, I am so very thankful. I can't thank you enough. I get emotional thinking about the hits that y'all take in doing this work, and anything personally that I could ever do, I'm there for you all. And so I do understand that you all are asking people to be at the next city council meeting. So I'll let you go ahead and speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Jane. I mean, we get a lot of criticism for what we do, and which is hard to understand because we're really doing this for everybody in the city, and particularly for our community, so we can have some real oversight and some real justice.
I don't want you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, brother, but I don't want you to sell yourself short, because the work that you do here is going to allow pilot programs throughout this nation, because the eyes are on Dallas. We had an opportunity to do some with Confederate monuments. I think we failed miserably. However, to send a message that we are going to move away from the idea that we are second-class citizens and do it in a way that's demonstrative, that I think is important. I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that you and Dominique and people like you who are, the Dallas Nine, who actually put their lives on the line. People don't really understand that every time you leave the house, you're not sure if you're going to make it back home and in what condition, because you are not fighting for just you and yours. You're fighting for mine and everybody who will listen. But then those people who are very happy in their lives and their little jobs and their little nice houses, you're also fighting for them. And I don't think that people understand the level of commitment and dedication and self-sacrifice that you and the people within the coalition are giving us. You're basically laying your lives on the line, because to tell the police they're wrong, to get in the police face and say, I'm going to work regardless of how it comes out, of outcomes, to improve the situation, but I really would like an opportunity to work with you and not against you, because I'm not naive to the fact that there was a time where you had to work against the police department to get to where you are now. I think that needs to be acknowledged and needs to be said and heard.
Right.
That, you're willing to do the work, not just for you, but for everyone. But tell people what you want Wednesday, and then I'm going to have to play for some of my sponsors.
Yeah, well, we're just going to City Council on Wednesday, and we ask everybody to join us who can join us. We need to pack the house and let, particularly Chad West and Councilwoman Blackman know that you can't play games with this board, and you can't devalue and value your divisive board members that you put on that board over the people that this board is supposed to serve. You're not going to center your appointees' value over our value, because that board is for us. And so we got to let them know it can't happen. And so we'll be there to speak on that, and we will let them know. We just gonna let them know we coming, and we're not gonna stop coming. We've already let them know in meetings and conversations this. So we'd like to see everybody come out to help us make that message loud and clear on Wednesday.
Just so people can draw a delineation between the work of the board and the expectation, is there an expectation that this board will have oversight and review of the handling of Amber Geiger for the Botham Jean murder case, and how that came, I guess, was not handled properly? I was about to say handled, but was not handled properly for the handling of Amber Geiger after the shooting. And then future forward. Is there an expectation that this board will look into Mike Mata's practices in the Dallas Police Department?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that the coalition is calling for, outside of, the problem we're having with the board appointees, is that we feel like Mike Mata should be fired. We're calling for people to go to the Fire Mike Mata campaign on change.org and sign a petition, because we feel like he should step down as DPA president, and he should be fired. But, if not fired, he needs to be under an investigation by the department into his actions into this case and any other cases where he had the authority or power to come on the scene and do what he did in the Amber Geiger case.
And so DPA is the Dallas Police Association. I want people to understand that he, as a sergeant in the Dallas Police Department, is also the president of the Dallas Police Association, and that association funds and hired, for an example, Amber Geiger's attorneys, and provides representation for them when they find themselves in a officer shooting or this kind of foolery that she was involved in. So I just want people to be able to understand what his role is and why you're asking for his resignation from the Dallas Police Association, as well as termination from Dallas Police Department. And you're saying if it's not the termination, then if he's not immediately terminated, you want a full review. And I know that Chief Hall said she was going to turn certain things over to internal affairs, but she did not name him in particular.
Right, but see, what we're going to do is, that's fine that the police department is going to do their investigation. We're asking for our newly formed Office of Police Oversight that represents the people to have its own investigation. So we're going to be requesting that from the chair of the Oversight Board to do its own independent investigation into the officer-involved shooting process, as well as Mike Mata.
Okay. All right. I
Hmm.
want to thank you all very much for taking your time and calling in. Hopefully, as this progresses, I can get you in here in the studio. People can put faces with names because we stream live on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. You don't get to have a face for radio anymore. Now you're seen everywhere. So I want to thank y'all, and hopefully we can get you in the studio. But I want to thank you, brother, for the work that you do and for the sacrifice that you make daily. Jane, I'm sure I'll talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
Absolutely.
so
Thank you,
much.
Coy.
All
We
right.
appreciate you.
Bye bye. I'm gonna take a quick break and let me at least let y'all hear from some sponsors, and I'll be right back. We're gonna talk about the Joshua Brown arrest warrants. We're gonna talk about the things they're saying, and I'll be right back. This is Coy with your black tea sip. Grab your cup. I'm not done filling it up.
Hi, this is Dr. Charles and Julian Kent.
Catch our show. I couldn't stop it because I didn't want to. What are people on Facebook saying? I didn't want to stop.
That was good though.
It's good information.
Yeah. But sometimes you gotta, you have this conversation, you can't stop it, you gotta keep going.
Yeah. I wanted to just keep going. I'm like, well, I gotta pay these people. You know, I've got two new sponsors. One guy wrote a book on police brutality, so I want to get Chandra and Dominique in here with him. He's coming up in November.
Really?
Or December.
I'd be interested in reading that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I asked him to send it. I need Tammy Gamble's commercial. Is there a way for you to send it to me so I can send it to him? The girly shop.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because, and, yeah, Jane's a good friend of mine. But these brothers are really doing the work.
Yeah.
And people don't understand what's involved. They don't know if they're going to make it home.
Right.
People are crazy.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not just the police department. People think it's the police department. It's not the police department.
It's more the people.
It's the people that are screaming and yelling. When I was on the task force for competitive monitoring, it's that we had an opportunity to do far more. They didn't do it. You know, I know Dallas is a hotbed.
Yeah. But it gets when there are people out there fighting the fight for sure.
And they're definitely fighting the fight.
I meant to ask you. I'll ask you.
Hmm.
I'll ask you. Just don't.
Yeah. Checking my. I got the licensing number for Sony. I'm gonna contact them and ask them why is it that y'all continue to. Only thing about this Periscope thing is I'm not figuring out how to put a. Who's that guy?
Oh, sports.
Oh, okay. Yes, water.
From the tap.
No, thank you. Somebody texted me and said you got a golf tournament thing going that happened a year ago. I mean a month ago. We just played it, I guess.
No, I think that's still going on.
Oh, no. I can't hear it. we got to figure out something so that these people don't have to just sit in silence.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to figure out. I know,
I'm gonna have to figure out something.
yeah, we can get a break graphic done. I know Carlos can do a break graphic with like just different videos and highlights and audio, going through that.
That's, yeah, he and I were talking about that, and
That's for sure a good option.
and
So we can just
Str-
you both try to figure it out.
this is just ridiculous. Now it's not gonna affect Facebook. I mean,
YouTube or
Periscope,
yeah.
but the majority of my people are Facebook
Exactly.
people.
And most people. That's like social media hub right there.
Okay, it's getting ready.
Club, everybody screaming out. God show me the way because the devil's trying to break me down. The only thing that I pray is that my feet don't fail me now.
I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job.
Tell me why, tell me why, tell me why. Why can't we live together? Tell me why, tell me why. Why can't we live together? Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together?
Hello, all you melanated beauties, sun-kissed by God's lips. This is Koi with your black tea sip. I'm sipping power to pour you the truth. Go grab your cup. Let's fill it up.
All right, so now we just finished listening to Dominique Alexander, Chunga Rock, and Jane Hamilton. And we were talking about the Dallas City's Community Police Review or Oversight Board. And part of what this board should be able to do is look into how Amber Geiger was treated and how the case in which she has been convicted as a murderer was conducted. And so part of my criticism for Chief U. Renee Hall, and see there, did y'all hear Dominique do it too? So it's not just me, because I know some of y'all be shaking y'all's head when I do that, but that's her name. That's what she goes by. So part of the dismay that we feel is in being able to trust and believe that we're going to get the representation from top leadership to help us find trust in the Dallas Police Department. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is the way that we found out about Joshua Brown. And you remember that he testified against Amber Geiger. And one of the things he said, part of her defense was that she gave him verbal commands, and because he did not comply with those verbal commands, she shot him. She acknowledges it was mistakenly, but she shot him. The problem with that is giving someone verbal commands when you're off duty and you're in someone else's home is beyond problematic. It's nonsensical. For there to be an expectation that you come in someone's home completely unknown and unbeknownst and unannounced and start yelling something at them, they're not going to respond because they're trying to figure out the situation and what's going on. Well, to that end, Joshua Brown testified that he said, no, that's not what they were saying. He did not hear yelling. He was in the hallway. If we know anything about this door, and I talked about it at length previously, if we know anything about this door, we know that the door did not always close. So I would assume that she's not in the room with the door fully closed, yelling at him with her gun drawn. So we have to assume that the door would have been ajar or open, because you just wouldn't walk into a dark room. Well, we've gone through that several times. What makes, because sometimes black folks' logic doesn't make blue sense. You understand what I'm saying? So I was sent the arrest warrant for two of the men that actually were said to have been involved with Joshua Brown's murder. And I want to just play a quick clip from Assistant Chief of Police Avery Morgan, when he comes on and he wants to announce to us that Joshua Brown has been murdered and by whom.
Joshua's family. We in the Dallas Police Department grieve with you. We understand how hard it is and how much pain is related to losing a loved one.
Okay, when he says losing a loved one. Now, they later come on and tell us that this young man testified was, in fact, a drug dealer, and that he was killed because of a drug deal gone wrong. And so what you hear him saying is that he wants to send his condolences to the family. Now, the first thing that I thought watching that press conference is, when did the Dallas police start to tell drug dealers' families, I'm sorry for your loss? I was like, Jay-Z, I ain't heard of that. But, okay, that happened. That did, in fact, happen. But then they go as far as to tell us that Joshua Brown pulled a gun and told the other guy to get back in the car. It was 3 of them that came from Louisiana, Alexandria, Louisiana, to Dallas, Texas to buy drugs. Okay, I'm going to get to that. I know y'all want to talk about that. I'm certainly going to get to that. But I also thought it was odd that the warrants that I have in my hand, I don't want to tell who sent it to me, so let me fold this part down and hold it in front of the camera. These arrest warrants that I have in my hand say that they're going to be charged with capital murder. They can't see it on this camera. Yeah, switch the camera for me. So that they're going to be charged with capital murder. Okay, well, based on what they're saying, there we go. Based on what they're saying, Joshua Brown told the guy to get in the car, and then he shot the man. So would that really be capital murder, or would that be self-defense? Because if someone shoots at you, you shoot back. Now, we can argue you weren't supposed to be there, you buying drugs, and there is this thing in the law called felony murder. But capital murder, which involves the death penalty for taking a life, but you were fired upon first. Well, Joshua Brown supposedly and allegedly shot the man who got out of the car to see what was going on between the 2 of them, because Joshua Brown was arguing with the man who set up this drug deal with him. He shoots the guy and tells the guy to get back in his car. So then, of course, the guy he's actually talking to shoots and kills him. Now, if you're fired upon, I don't know if that's capital murder. I also want to get you all to think about how we found out about Joshua Brown and his background. Now, I believe it's a character assassination, but I've had people tell me no. Maybe I had someone tell me, maybe he's just a dum-dum. Some people are dumb. You have dumb criminals. They got a whole show, dedicated to it. So I don't know. But let me tell you what I do know. And I never sold drugs a day of my life. I'm sure you can believe that. But I do know that they have drugs in Louisiana. We're talking about weed. We're not talking about meth or ecstasy or, give me some more drugs. Cocaine or crack or something. We're talking about weed. Weed. You know how many ports there are in Louisiana? They drove all the way from Alexandria. Then they drove through Houston. If there are any drugs in Texas, they're in Houston. I'm sorry, Houston people. But there are drugs. It's a port. Drugs always come in through a port. I've watched enough Law and Order and, enough, crime dramas to know that. Don't y'all know that? So it seems odd. I'm just saying, it seems very weird that they left Alexander to come get this, this dope from him. So, I guess he had to Texas Sticky Icky. I don't know. It just seems odd. Then the assistant chief, Avery Morgan, goes on to describe how they went to Paradise Hospital. I've lived here all my life. I have no idea where Paradise Hospital is. And then from Paradise, he's transported to Parkland, which is a community hospital. And, you know, if you have your arm severed, that's where you want to go because they have the know-how to attach it. So he went to Parkland, and then when he talked to them, per this arrest warrant, they have something in the law called Miranda rights. And that is cause for a custodial interrogation. You are being detained for the purposes to extract information from you that is pursuant to the matter at hand. So that's a custodial interrogation. A non-custodial interrogation means you're just talking, it's a fact-finding, but not necessarily going to hold you accountable or don't believe they're going to hold you accountable. Well, they did that. So they're saying at approximately 10:30 at night, patrol officers responded to a shooting call at 4606 Cedar Springs Road. Upon arrival, patrol officers found Joshua Brown lying in the parking lot of apartment complex. Now, what I also want to say is this is supposedly his apartment complex. Now, I don't know a whole lot about dope deals, but I would be sure to think that most people do not conduct dope deals with people they don't know that come from another state at their home. Again, a peculiarity, but who am I? I'm not a drug dealer. I'm just a thinker. So then it goes on to say that he had multiple gunshots. Now, originally, remember, they said that he was shot in the mouth. People believed that it was the police officers telling him to be quiet. Now they're saying he was shot in his back. I also think that's very odd because who gets it? You've shot one person. The other person is standing there, and you turn your back to get in your car, not believing that person is going to shoot you. Again, I'm no drug dealer, but I mean, I don't know people that just turn their backs on people, you know, after they've shot someone and another person is still standing there. I mean, the whole thing just seems peculiar. Okay. The arrest warrant goes on to talk about Mitchell, and Jacarius Mitchell. And he supposedly shoots Brown, grabs the backpack of weed and the gun, and then that's how the other shooter, the other person involved, the person that got shot, not the other shooter. Let's just call him a victim for lack of a better word. He is then transported, you know, they come up with this story that I'm not going to bore you with because I find it to be ridiculous. So, Thaddeus Green, I believe, is the one that's in Parkland Hospital now, and these arrest warrants are for capital murder. Now, there was a video circulating of Joshua Brown, and he had a pound of weed, and he was in Miami, Florida. And in this video, he's talking about he had to come to the crib, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I don't know if this boy was a drug dealer or not. I do think it's extremely odd that the defense counsel didn't go through his Facebook page and find this, and it wasn't until after he was murdered that we're able to find out that he's got a pound of weed and he's rolling and smoking a blunt. Sometimes, I lived in Florida for a while, so I'm using this to back up my statement. I lived in Jacksonville. Shout out to Duval. Sometimes people buy a pound of weed for their own personal use. I don't smoke weed, but I know people that live in states where weed is legal, and they do buy large quantities of weed for their own personal use. They talked about Joshua Brown having an extensive rap sheet. It said drug possession. It never said drug distribution. I've never known them to give a black man a break on a drug charge. If they believed he was distributing dope, I think they would have said that. Again, I'm going to go back. Joshua Brown testified in the murder case of Amber Geiger. I just find it extremely peculiar that the defense counsel did not attempt or seek to discredit him based on his record and based on this video that has since come out after his murder. I think it's also very odd that this young man who was leaving the strip club was with another guy, a friend. That guy was shot and killed standing next to him, and he was subsequently shot in the foot. His friend was on one of the local news shows saying Joshua Brown had told him he was just going to lay low because he was going to testify against the shooter in that first crime. That guy was out on bond. Again, I just have to say, I'm sitting here like Jay-Z. I ain't heard of that. When do black people get out on bond for shooting and killing other black people? Look, we know they don't care much about us, but they have never not found an opportunity to throw us away, even when we shooting and killing our own folk. I just, Amber Geiger was out on bond because it was an accident. But I didn't know they let you out on bond for murdering people at a strip club. Again, I ain't heard of that. Me and Jay-Z, we ain't heard of that. So you have Joshua Brown who's saying he's going to lay low. I think that that's true. You've been involved in one murder. And he believed that he was the target. You then are in the standing across from your apartment. You're in the hallway. You hear a police officer off duty shoot and kill your neighbor. PTSD is real. To say that he wasn't going to lay low, I think is oxymoronic, and I'm not fluent in it. So, to that end, I think that it would have been a wise thing for him to lay low. So, I also think it's odd that his Facebook page was just wide open for anybody to see it. I mean, Jane and I, who you just heard from, she and I were talking about it, and she made the statement, you can just Google it and then go to his Facebook page and just run down it. It's just another peculiarity. You know what I mean? And so you have all of this information wrapped up neatly in these two little arrest warrants and a little contrived press conference from Assistant Chief Morgan, and it sounds strange. I want to play one more clip. Let's play that second clip because I want you to listen to something as we get ready to close.
As you know, I've said it before, that we value human life. We understand that there are some in the community that do not, but the Dallas Police Department does value.
Let me play that. Can you get the end of it? Oh, at the end of it, I'm sorry, we cut that clip short. He says, there are some in the community that do not value human life, but we at the Dallas Police Department, we do value human life. Okay. I think that's very odd that he felt like he needed to say that. He needed to tell us that the Dallas Police Department values human life. Okay. So the people in the community that may not value human life would be whom? Is he identifying these people? Are we talking about Amber Geiger? Because she said she felt like crap. I mean, who in the community is he identifying that do not value human life? Like, who would that be? Who do you think that is? It's just weird. That's a weird phrase, especially at this juncture. And then people in the community. Well, you've already said that these three young men were not from Dallas. So they're not part of our community that shot and killed Joshua Brown. So I thought that was a very strange statement. Then I said, well, is that code? Is he trying to tell us something? Is that his way of saying that something may be afoot and that this might not be completely honest, accurate, straightforward, and forthright? That's all I can say. You remember Arsenio Hall back in the day? Things that make you go, Well, that's really all I can say because I thought that was weird for somebody on the police department to say. And I also thought that it was extremely peculiar to suggest that people in our community, when these people that you're speaking of in particular, and for this specific purpose, are not from the community. And so is he subtly identifying people. Like, it was just so many thoughts going on in my head because I have never, again, I ain't heard of that. I've never heard of a police department saying that. So I just want to close with a few things. We have the Joshua Brown murder that they have very quickly solved. They know immediately that these individuals came from Alexandria, Louisiana, and they shot and killed Joshua Brown. But Joshua Brown was the initial shooter, if you believe the story. And he was the drug dealer involved in a drug buy that went wrong. The people that killed him are going to be charged with capital murder, even though there was just one person who pulled the trigger. He shot first. They left Alexandria to drive to Dallas to buy drugs, in which the drug deal was taking place in Joshua Brown's apartment garage where he currently lives because he moved out of Southside Flats after the Botham Jean murder. The same man who was supposed to testify against the guy who shot and killed the man he was with at the strip club and subsequently shot him in the foot. Joshua Brown was supposed to testify there. He had just testified for Botham Jean. He's been a witness to 2 murders, either directly or indirectly. He said he was going to lay low, but his Facebook page was wide open, and he's on there with a pound of weed in Miami rolling blunts. I want y'all to say that out loud to yourself 3 times and see if it makes sense to you. I'll hold. No, none of this makes sense. And the reason I wanted you all to hear about the Dallas City's Community Oversight Board, which we spent a lot of time talking about Chief Hall, is because those of you that live here need this information. Those of you that do not, that are watching Dallas and trying to understand the makeup of Dallas and what we are going to tolerate and disallow, need to hear the things that they're giving us. And these young people, this coalition, has worked diligently to ensure that if something like this were to happen, because at the time they started working on this coalition, they had no idea that these kinds of things would be brought to the forefront of who Dallas is. This oversight board is supposed to have the teeth and the substance to make the inquiries to put our hearts and minds at rest. So when you have Chief U. Renee Hall that has her assistant police chief come up and give us this malarkey, and then you have Chief U. Renee Hall that attempts to take over, overshadow, and override the Community Oversight Board that is supposed to operate separately and independently of the Dallas Police Department, when you have the city manager, who is Chief Hall's assistant city manager, who is Chief Hall's boss, writing the agenda for the Oversight Board. You have to wonder if something ain't funky in Dallas. So for those persons, I started out talking about someone that I knew that said she wasn't willing to put her life on the line. Thank God for those that are. We have some real problems in Dallas. I want to be able to keep you apprised and abreast of what's going on, but I too find myself in a precarious situation when I bring these things forward. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those with your hot teacup. I do not take drugs. I am not an excessive drinker. I do not beat my children. I do not mistreat my mother and father. If you see something that they say I did not do it, and y'all rise up. Go to Highland Park and burn it down. Don't burn up Oak Cliff. No. Don't burn up Oak Cliff. Go north. But I want you to be aware that there are people putting their lives on the lines because of these kinds of things. And the Oversight Board, there was all intention and purpose for them to be able to look into the handling of this case, Amber Geiger and also Joshua Brown. Now, that was not said. That is me. But the community has a right to say, hey, we want more information. So I want you all to support the coalition. I'll be there Wednesday. I'd love to, if you're a follower of this show, to come by and shake my hand, tell me what you think personally. But please try to come out on Wednesday if you're a local And you don't have to be a Dallas local. You be a McKinney local, a Plano local, a Denton local, DeSoto, Duncanville, Cedar Hill, Oakville, Waxahachie, Waco. You can be a local and come and support the efforts and the movement that is taking place in Dallas. Because if we are successful here, we can be successful everywhere. This is Coy with your Black Tea Sip. I hope you grabbed your cup. I hope I filled it up. We'll do it again next Friday. For those of you in Dallas already, I'll see you again. Can't wait.
Staring at this Bible as I keep glancing. Dear Lord, I got questions and I need answers. I'm trying to understand your vision, all I see is damage. Just a bunch of dead bodies in the street camping. A bunch of lost souls on their feet standing. We supposed to be your children, I thought we family. You supposed to be my father, bro, I need answers. We don't need to die young, we just need chances. Tired of living on the edge, so we keep scrambling. Trying to talk to these strippers, but they keep dancing. We just want to be number one like Steve Francis. Bow our heads, say a prayer, now the seeds planted. Everywhere I turn, I'm seeing MCs vanish. Lot of good gone, I don't understand it. Lot of families lost and they seeds stranded. I ain't trying to disrespect you, I just need answers. I know you watching us from heaven, thinking who to save. Cherry picking who should go next and who should stay. I'd be on my way to heaven if I knew the way. And bring back every good you choose to take. They say you never wrong, but you done made a few mistakes. Cause you taking the wrong, maybe you should trade. Trade us back all the real ones, remove the fakes. I think you should trade. Give us 2 buy back and take you should. Let the legend resurrect that he gon' live for good. I be screaming thug life in every different hood. If only you can bring him back, Lord, I wish you would. Give us Biggie, give us Pun, give us Triple X. Take that Trump with you, that's a bigger threat. There's too much power for a coward with no intellect. That's a bigger with a collar, there's a disconnect. Dying, mama crying, grandma need a tissue. Shooting up the church, now I need a. All them still living, you don't see the issue. But how you take a leader, then you take a leader with you. I ain't trying to disrespect, just need a meter with you. I ain't trying to overstep, just want a reason with you. Give us back our loved ones and take the evil with you. Send them suckers straight to hell, they don't need a vigil. I need you to give us back Martin Luther. Take Martin Shkreli, give us back Malcolm. Take R. Kelly, R.I.P. Lil Snoop, get that boy's life back. Take Eric Holder, give us Eric right back. I'm sending you this message, Lord, I hope you hit me right back. They say I'm on the wrong train, I know I'm on the right track. Cause Trayvon gone and all he did was try to fight back. Zimmerman walk around free, we don't like that. Why you take our mothers from us? Fathers and our sisters and our cousins from us. Got these children getting murdered while they double dutching. Wondering why the take Nipsey Hussle from us. Damn, you took a true king, a true brother from us. A marathon, but they running from us. Now everybody got is up to something. And every gangster wanna prove that they tough or something. You know it's not fair, tell the truth. I've been in my feelings too. But if you took Emmett Till, at least take Dylan Roof. At least take James Holmes. I ain't even mad at that. Just bring back Whitney and give us Michael Jackson back. Feds want me and then slam it down. Ain't no justice for Sandra Bland. We up like a Salem fan. Lord, if you listen, I'm just looking for a hand in hand. Take out the to give us back our fam again. Drowning in my tears, trying to pray for something. Wonder why you give us life for you to take it from us. Wonder why you give us family, then erase it from us. Maybe, hopefully, you can have a conversation with us. Maybe I'm just probably tripping, cause I need a hug. The hood can't find jobs, now we need a plug. Everybody and their mama trying to be a thug. I don't go to church, cause I'm afraid of being judged. I've been staring at the ceiling as I lie in bed. Watch it follow trends like Simon says. I pray you give us back the real ones and try again. Or maybe take the that deserve to die instead. Tommy Lauren run her mouth and then she get defensive. Lauren Ingram laughing at death and disrespecting. I really feel like you should teach them stupid a lesson. Either that or give us back somebody who deserved the blessings. I left out a bunch of names that I forgot to mention. Cost too much to pay attention and it got expensive. Father, forgive me for I know not what I do, and now I'm reaching out to you hoping you hear me and return the message. I know that you got our back and that you're not against us. Or maybe you just love us so you detest us. I just kinda thought that you would do more to protect us. They say the good die young and I ain't on the guest list. I've been drinking, Lord, forgive me as my blood racing. I don't know what I'm thinking, I'm just frustrated. I don't mean to question you, I'm just confused. I don't know what else to do, I've been patient and it sucks waiting. Took my mans from me, that forever hurts. But putting the blame on you, that'll never work. I know this ain't your fault, it's the devil's work. Devil's work.
Hey, what's up? This is Jay from the Jay and LNA show. I'm just here to let y'all know that the game's still the same. The only thing that changes is the room. You can catch me, Queen, Mike, and Rhino Mike each and every Wednesday night from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. in the Grey Bowl. You'll be able to hear funny conversations, banging music, and everything else that you want to hear.